Are we recording already?
I started before I forget about it.
Okay. Oh, in terms of I haven't checked the slides, sorry. Maybe the last slide on next agenda. I know that we had triaged some items. I know some of the actions are on me to finish those off. But Uh, are they like on already on the slide for like what's going to be in the next call?
I don't know, Daniel.
All right. I will find out when we get to it, the slide.
Why people? Oh, I can see that the meeting invite was sent out with a Teams link as well, so people are joining the Teams
Oh no, really?
the
Do I
Teams
have to go
meeting
through the
instead of
Teams and tell them
the,
to join the
the
Zoom?
Zoom. Yeah,
All right. I'm going to do that now.
Thank
yeah,
you.
kidding.
All right, it's hit 10. I'll start admitting people.
Yep,
Actually, who sent that invite? Because I'm waiting for someone to let me in, so it's not a Cyro invite.
it's work groups Agile 7 AU, so I
Oh,
assume it's Brett.
okay.
Let me see if I can join.
No, it's okay. I mean,
No,
I will
yeah,
let people know.
probably try the chat.
I was intrigued to see what happened if I pressed the join button.
Yeah, so we're not but let me just see. Maybe I can. Oh no, chat is turned off, of course. So yeah, they'll be stuck on Lost Island for a bit until figure out where to go. We have a very small audience today, so I'm hoping that everybody's on the other one.
Hoping.
Yeah.
May not be quite the right term.
I just heard Danielle in there reverting everyone, so I think she's onto it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'll keep the Teams thing open so I can just let people know as they join the Teams that to come across here. Because we, get some people who need to come a bit later.
There you go. The numbers are starting to go up. Right, might give it another minute and then we need to go. Okay, seems that the numbers have stopped to increase, so I might kick us off because we have a jam-packed agenda. So I hope you can all see my screen. So good morning, everybody, and thanks for taking the time to attend this Patient Summary FHIR IG project meeting call. My name is Ricardo Inácio, and I'll be your chair for today's meeting. Before we go through today's agenda, I'd just like to begin with acknowledgement of country. So we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we all gather today. We pay our respect to elders past, present, and emerging, and extend our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. We acknowledge the First Peoples as the first scientists, educators, and healers. So today we have quite a jam-packed agenda, as you can see here on the screen. So we'll kick off with our usual business and updates, and then Danielle will take us through Ballot 101. After that, we'll go through some ballot reconciliation activities, which will be led by Landon and myself. And then Danielle again will take us through the QA.html for the patient summary. She'll do a walkthrough of that. And finally, we'll look at what's next. So for the approval of minutes, I will probably just assume that everybody here has had the opportunity to go through the minutes and review them. But if not, just feel free to let us know. I will quickly try to put them up on the screen if I can. This will be a bit of a challenge now. Okay, I think this might be it. So, okay, and thanks, Shelley, for pasting the link in the chat. So we have here the meetings, the meeting minutes of the meeting of the 10th. And we have the other ones, which are the meeting minutes for the meeting of the 20th. So as I said, I'm assuming you had the opportunity to go through them and review them. I don't see any hands up, so try to kind of move us forward. So hoping someone wants to submit a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meetings, please.
Move to approve.
Thanks, Stephen. And can I have a second, please?
Happy to second Landon Riley.
Thank you. I will now launch the poll. Okay. If you're not able to vote, please just drop your vote on the chat. Okay. We've had 100% of people. Sorry, no, I was reading the wrong. So the number's still going up. I'll give it a few more seconds. People who haven't been able to vote to cast their vote. Okay, so I think the numbers have stopped going up. So I'll end the poll and read the results. So we have 8 affirmative votes and 7 abstain, which means the motion has passed. So thank you.
So, Ricardo, can I just confirm that includes Landon's vote in the chat?
Yeah, it does. It does. So
Perfect.
seven online plus Lennon. Yep. Let me go back to sharing the presentation. Okay. Okay, so on a different topic, so we wanted to take the opportunity here to share the results of this poll that we have here on the screen. So let me know if you're able to see my browser or you're still seeing the presentation. Sorry, just not too sure.
No, your browser's coming up.
Okay, so you can see the Zulip?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, cool. So we put forward a poll to confirm the project meeting or the AUPS project meeting time moving forward when daylight savings ended. So this is the result we got from this from this poll. So we had 11 votes in favor of option 1, so keeping the meeting as it is. So Friday at 10 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, which means this will be the direction we'll take moving forward. So thanks to everybody who's had the opportunity to vote on this one. And this will help us ensure that we trying to capture as many people as possible as we kind of continue this project course. Thank you for that. We'll now just so this one is, I think, a straggler. So just double checking this one. I think this one is not supposed to be here as a link. Does anyone know about it? The R1 ballot for working standard.
Oh, I think you can move on. I'm
Yep.
starting
Yep.
to suspect that nobody's checked the slides
Yeah.
and that they're not up to date. So we'll see how things
Okay.
go.
Cool. I thought this one was a leftover from the previous one. Or so on. Okay. In terms of where we are in the ballot reconciliation journey, just a very quick update of what we're trying to work towards to, which is a publishing of the working standard by the 8th of July. So you can see here on the screen that we're roughly around here. We will be focusing on ballot resolution discussions over the upcoming patient summary calls that we have. And as I said, we'll try to make sure we'll track to get to the publishing of the working standard by the 8th of July. So these upcoming meetings, as I said, will be heavily focused on ballot resolution and working through all the JIRA issues that have been raised for this ballot. So
Keep going. I think
yep,
these are old
yep.
slides. They've not, I don't think we've updated.
Okay. So this has been discussed and confirmed already. So I think this one's the same. We've gone through this already. So I'll skip through this. And I guess now it's over to you, Danielle, for the ballot 101. Let me know if you want
Yeah.
to share
All
or
right.
if you want me to drive the slides.
No, I'm happy to share. I've got the slide pack open, so that's probably easier.
Okay.
Let me just get that ready. Um, okay. I'll just hit the share button. Ooh, I think I hit the app. Yep, you can see my screen?
We can. Yep.
Perfect. All right. I'm going to try and keep this real quick. But we're going through it because this is our first ballot reconciliation call. So the things and the terms we're going to talk about today are requirements for HL7AU governance. So we have to talk about things in certain terms. So we're going to lay them out today around how we need to do that. And then we're going to go through and talk about the feedback we got from ballot and make some decisions, but make sure we're using the right kind of the right framework that has been put in place by HL7 Australia. I'm going to skip past a bunch of this. I wanted to highlight to people, and I'd like these links, Shelley, to be in the minutes, just to reconfirm for people where they can go to if they want more information around what the actual framework we're making decisions is. And it's done by HL7 International, and as an affiliate, we've adopted that. We also have adapted it because, we don't have the same decision-making bodies. We've got Australian ones, but otherwise, same. So, again, I'm going to skip past most of this and go, all right, so our scope for patient summary was pretty ambitious, and it looks like we're doing it. We've got all these different resource profiles that are put in place, which are the both the highest and then the second highest priority that came out of an AU patient scoping call back when we started. Well, actually, it was face to face. almost 18 months ago. We've got a bunch of guidance and a set of kind of informative pages and examples, and we've defined our actor definitions. So these are kind of the artifacts that have been in scope for Ballot. Now, in terms of Ballot, what we're going to be looking at are all the feedback items that came in. So that everyone who voted needed to vote both overall, but if they had negative comments or if they wanted to vote on specific items, then they would vote on JIRAs. It doesn't have to be their JIRA. It can be any kind of piece of feedback that someone during ballot evaluation can look at and think, yeah, no, that really should be considered for us in releasing R1. So here's what's possible. When you raise some feedback against the specification, you can do it as a change request. These always come through the work group. So every change request that gets raised that is an actual change request will come to this group for decision making. And we will look at it and determine whether or not we think, yes, okay, we should make a change. Maybe we'll think, look, that's valid, but it's not feasible to do that at this point in time. So we might defer it. Or we might actually push back and say, look, no, there are reasons why the content is the way it is, and we don't agree. There are technical corrections. Those go through the co-chairs. The co-chairs bear the administrative burden. So a technical correction is meant to be something that is incredibly obvious, like a defect. So we just have co-chairs who do an assessment on these to either agree, yeah, look, no, it's really obviously a defect, or it, at that point, it might actually be triaged to be a change request if it's actually an enhancement. And then, of course, that will come through this group. The other two kinds of things we get are questions and comments. We didn't get any of those in this ballot, so I'm not going to linger on them. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this either, because to a degree, it doesn't matter whether or not someone voted affirmative or negative. All items marked by a ballot voter, whether it is affirmative or negative, are things that we need to consider as we're doing ballot reconciliation. So marking things negative doesn't make them any more important than affirmative. It does just signal that you think that the item is of such significance that we couldn't possibly publish the specification without addressing it. So it does provide some information, but if you're a ballot voter, all your feedback is considered. So here's where we are now. We are, as work group members, going to be working on these resolutions and having a number of calls as we go through every piece of ballot feedback that was voted on and make a decision on what we do about it, whether we make a change, whether we defer it, whether we say no change. I'm just going to move past that really quickly and go, here is the set of things that we need to, I guess, be saying when we're making our ballot decisions. So if we want to defer it, which really just means not for this particular release, so we won't make a change in R1, the resolution uses the words considered for future use. So it still stays in our backlog. It just means that we are not going to make a change in R1, but it's still a reasonable enough item that we would want to consider it in a future release. We've then got persuasive. That's when we both agree with the rationale and the actual change. I'll tell you now, most things don't end up persuasive. What things often end up is something like persuasive with modification, where the topic that someone has raised, we agree, okay, no, that's valid, but some kind of different suggestion whether it's even a small difference is made by this group to say, well, actually, we're going to do an extra example change, means that we call that persuasive with modification, which means, yes, we agree with the feedback that's been raised, but we also think that different or additional changes need to be undertaken. So persuasive with mod is relatively common. Not persuasive is where we don't agree. We agree with neither the rationale, we don't agree with the change, and we also haven't identified anything else that we might want to fix. And by that, I'm bringing us to the next one that's quite common, which is not persuasive with modification, where someone has provided some feedback, and we might look at that and say, no, look, we're not going to make that change, but we might make some other change in the specification, sometimes to clarify why the original content is correct. Or there can be some other kind of guidance things that we include that help, I think, try to address the root cause of why this was raised in the first place, but isn't persuasive. So those are the dispositions, and for every piece of feedback we consider today, we're going to need to agree on one of these. Are there any questions on those? All right. I mean, we can ask them at the time. And sometimes there's a bit of a debate, honestly, on which one is, whether it's persuasive with modification or not persuasive with modification. That does get a bit of a debate. So I'm done with that one now. I think I'll hand that over to whoever is going through the ballot reconciliation.
Thanks, Danielle. I think Landon, you have the first couple of items. So do you want me to share the screen?
Actually, I might share the screen
Yeah.
in
Okay.
case I need to navigate to other screens. All right,
Yep.
share now.
Cool.
Okay. Oh, can you see the screen by any chance?
Yep.
Perfect. All right, cool. This is the first ballot reconciliation item. All right, cool. So this one was raised by Ricardo and refers to an example of computer-generated patient summaries. So this request was asking whether we should add an example of a computer-generated patient summary. The co-chairs reviewed this and determined that it was non-persuasive with modification. The key reason is that example already exists, a Joyce example from November 2024, so we're not missing that content. However, it was recognized that it's not currently clear which examples are computer-generated. So instead of adding more content, we agreed the approach is to improve the clarity. Specifically, the use case page will be updated to include whether each example is human authored or human generated. So that's the example here. Does anyone need me to drill into the actual Jira ticket for this one? It pretty much just has this baseline
Would you
information.
please, Landon? I think just for like point of order, if we could
Point
just
of order? Yeah.
open the Jira and just make sure that everyone can, yeah, see the description of it.
Sounds good. All right, cool. So this is the Jira here, raised by Ricardo. This is the description and an example of computer-generated AUPS, and that is the resolution description. And this is the example, so we might drill into this one as well, just to see what this example is. And I'm assuming this is device-generated. Now, I'm not exactly sure which use case page will be updated, but I guess that's to be determined.
If you went to, there's the I think the examples page,
Maybe. Oh,
um,
okay. That's what I thought it might have been that one. So let's go straight there.
which I guess links which examples are related to which use cases. So as you can see there for composition author, it has device. So that's the computer generated one. So it would be the use case page associated with that one. And we've got the link there. So that's the referral to specialist and allied health.
Okay.
So I think if you could click on referral to specialist and allied health and scroll down to the bottom where we've got examples, um, I think it's quite valid that we don't make it clear. Um, Even though like we had all the like discussions in these meetings on whether or not we would make something like device authored and agreed on it, but it's not clear on this page that it is device authored. I mean, it is clear on the other page, but not this one. So I think that's reasonable that we make a change here to be clear. In like these bullet points, well, numbered the numbered list that what the author is.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Daniel, for clarifying. All right, so moving back to this slide, was there any questions from anyone around this?
One thing to add on, within the examples as well, there's no narrative with the description saying who's the author. That might help as well to see the device details.
To indicate it was a device.
Within the example. So the example that we have for system generated patient summary, it doesn't hold any details about device or author.
It does. I mean, the generated bit, like, you might have to control F for device because this narrative view is generated by IG Publisher, but it has a device author in it. And
So this is the wrong one. It's the
Oh,
28. So you need to go on the other
Oh,
one, and the other one
thank you.
has device there on top on the document details. You'll see it
There
on
we
the
go.
first. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Ricardo. Cool. I think that clears that one up. All right. Any further questions? All right.
Good.
Given no more questions, I might put forward a motion to accept this issue as non-persuasive and to make that use case modification to make it clear if it's human authored or computer generated.
Excellent. Does anyone want to second that?
I'm happy to second Heath.
Thanks, Heath. Okay. If you're not able to vote, just please write your vote in the chat. We might give it a few more seconds because we need a few more votes. This one. Okay, so I will now stop the poll and read the results. Just Bear with me. Okay, so we have 13 affirmative votes, and that includes one from Landon in the chat. And we have 2 abstain, which means the motion is passed. Thank you. Back to you, Landon.
Perfect. Thank you, Ricardo. All right, I'll move on to the next one. All right, so this one was raised by Stephen Chu. So this one is a profile comparison. No equivalent profile for comparison can cause confusion. So I have paraphrased this one. I'll move to the juror ticket in a second, but I'll just talk to the summary I have on the screen. Then we'll show the actual ticket. So this issue relates to the profile comparison section, where the AU patient summary composition is shown as having no equivalent profile for comparison in AU Core 2.0. So the point, and you can see this one here, that it had, that's that example. So the point being raised is that this may cause confusion. So, that the concern is that the AU patient summary is derived from AU-based composition, and that relationship isn't visible in the comparison table. So the argument is that the current presentation may hide that linkage, and the suggested change is to add a one-line note indicating that an AU patient composition is derived from or based on an AU base composition. So that was the issue description. I wonder if I talk to the disposition now. Actually, I might do that. I might talk to what the group came, the co-chairs came up with the disposition, then I'll show the ticket. Go back one. So the co-chairs came to the disposition of not persuasive, and the reason is that the comparison section is intended for profile comparison and assessment of compatibility. So it's not for describing how profiles are derived. So while the concern is raised is understood, it's outside the scope of what this table is designed to show. The statement that an AU patient summary composition has no equivalency in AU core profile is correct. So importantly, we are not providing the derivation information in this section, and that is not the purpose of that previously seen comparison view. So that was the disposition that the co-chairs came up with. So what I might do now is I'll show you the actual ticket itself, and we'll have a look at this, but I might open up to questions as well.
So, Brendan, I will make a comment since that you open it up for questions.
Sure.
So the issue is that without that level of clarity, when the disposition is non-persuasive, that it gives the impressions that the profiles is sort of arising from thin air. Although the profile itself clearly points to IU base. So in my opinion, it's useful to remove that lack of clarity by including some statement to say that yes, although the profile comparisons sort of I didn't find any alignment with AU core, but the profile itself is based on AU base. So I think a statement like that will be useful, in my opinion.
Thanks, Stephen. Danielle, you have your hand up.
The top of the comparison page talks about its scope, which doesn't include AU base. We are very clear in the other sections that talk about the relationships between specifications on what every profile is related to, including, so I mean, that one talks about here are the things we're comparing, and it doesn't include AU base. So I don't think it's a problem that we have excluded comparison to something that is out of scope for the page. I and I do think that we've adequately got a description of the relationship. Because I mean, I do think that's important. Maybe if you go Landon up to guidance, um, and you look at the general guidance, and I think click on resource profile approach. This is just one of the areas. There's more areas where we talk about this, and then kind of like start to scroll down around profiling approach. We've got diagrams around like what are we deriving from and what's the relationship. So it's not hidden in the specification. It's just not the target of comparison. And I think that's okay.
Brett?
Oh, yeah, I was just going to note as well. I mean, all of the AU core profiles are derived from AU base as well. So I don't know why we would need to state that for a particular one. In the sense that we're not talking about anything about derivation really. It's more its mission is to set out the difference from AU core rather than say how things are constructed.
Cool.
I also
Yep.
suspect this problem will go away in R2 of AU Patient Summary because AU Core is working on an AU Core composition, and that would be what the future AU Patient Summary will derive from. So I think it's a transitory problem. I'd rather not open up the comparison page scope to base. This isn't the only thing that um, that we don't have a core profile from, but base does. And I think it's distracting, I guess.
Cool. Thank you. Was there any further comments around this one? I kind of do like the fact that you're not really going to declare, like it's a useful page to knowing what you're declaring conformance against, and typically you're not going to try to work out if you're conforming against AU base. All right, so given that there's no more comments, what I might do then is I might put forward a motion to accept that this change request is non-persuasive.
Thanks, London. Does anyone want to second that?
I think I should. I've been passionate in this defense, so Danielle seconding.
Thanks, Danielle. Okay. Okay, probably need a couple more votes. All right, the numbers are going up nicely, so I'll give it another 5 seconds and end the poll. Okay, thank you, Veronica. So I'll read out the results. So we've had 12 affirmative votes, and that includes Landon's vote in the chat, and we have 3 abstain, which means the motion is passed. Thank you, and back to you again, Landon.
Cool. Thank you, Ricardo. Okay, this is the last one I'm going through today. This one was also raised by Stephen Chu. So again, I have summarized the contents, and we'll go to the juror ticket in a minute. It's just to fit this on a slide. So this issue relates, I think, to a patient journey where it states that an endocrinologist updates a patient summary. And the point being raised is this conflicts how clinical documents are handled in FHIR, specifically to FHIR clinical document guidance, which states that a clinical document remains in an unaltered state. So the key concern is that a patient summary is basically a point-in-time snapshot and not something that is updated. So new data from the encounter should result in a new patient summary, meaning that the composition or version created is uploaded. So suggested change here is to remove updates a patient summary wording. That is the change request is this here. So I'll do the same as before. I'll go to the disposition and then we'll look at the ticket itself. So this position the co-chairs landed on is non-persuasive, and the reasoning is that editing the life cycle management of a patient summary document is outside the scope of the AU Patient Summary Release 1. The referral to specialists and allied health use case page will be updated to clarify that the focus of this content is step 4, the endocrinologist consultation. So we may be moving that use case above the diagram. The feedback will also be provided to the clinical focus group regarding the wording and broader interpretation. So overall, no change to this specification, but clarification and feedback will be provided. So I might load up the ticket now. Brett, you've raised your hand.
Oh, this would be non-persuasive with mod, right? Because
Yeah, that's
yeah,
what
yeah,
threw me. So I'm just going to put with
yeah,
mod.
yeah.
Maybe I
I
didn't
think that's
copy
right.
and paste it over.
Cool, thanks.
Because that threw me for a second when I was speaking through it. I went, wait a second. Actually, let's look at what's in the ticket and make sure I did make an error just with copy paste there.
So I think I'll just clarify for people that
I did.
we can't change the image. And by we, I mean the work group. The consumer journey is defined by the Sparked Clinical Focus Group and all the wording on it. So we can, and this is good feedback, provide that into the Patient Summary Clinical Focus Group, which is still active, for them to consider changing the diagram. But we can't unilaterally do that. It's an input that we get from our clinical folks.
I'm okay with the disposition of referring it back to the clinical group, but it needs to be made very clear that the issue at hand here is not about clinical decision. It's more about how the technical implementation as per the FHIR clinical document guideline, and it shouldn't be confused with the clinical workflow. Now, a specialist or endocrinologist might decided that the contents of the patient summaries needs to be refreshed. But that's a clinical workflow thing, but it's not a technical workflow. From a technical workflow perspective, as per the International 807 FHIR clinical document guideline, the document once or the patient summary once being generated should remain as a point-in-time document and is immutable from that perspective. So we need to separate the two conversations, both from the technical perspectives and also from the clinical workflow perspective.
Great, thanks, Stephen. Was there any further questions around this one or any comments? All right, hearing none, I might go back to this. So I might put forward a motion. How will I construct this? This particular ticket, ballot item, sorry, is not persuasive with mod. And we will go back to the AUPS CFG and provide this feedback and potentially put some or change some wording in the use case. Based on this here, for whether a patient summary is updated or newly generated. Brett.
Is it just the language of the word updating, right? I mean, from the clinician's perspective, it's updating. They're updating a patient summary. But I think from a technical perspective, they are superseding. So I don't know if we want to just put, because I think it's just to Stephen's point that the original clinical document lives on. It's just that there's a new version of it.
Yeah.
And whether it's generated from scratch or updated manually, it doesn't matter much. It's a replacement for the original document.
I mean, as long as we're clear that we can't update the diagram.
Yeah, and I don't think I think it would just be adding a word or two maybe that is like,
So, do you have a friendly amendment you would like to make?
I'm just thinking, because I'm just thinking it's either like a replacement patient summary or a new version of patient summary.
Yeah, if it's being changed to a replacement patient summary of new version, then I am fully in support of that.
A new patient summary, really, irrespective of it being a version or it's a new patient summary, right?
Yeah, a new copy
Yeah,
of
they're
the
all
patient
new.
summary.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
might not be. I'm just going to speak for Heath because, I mean, that's the point of business identifiers versus instance identifiers. Like, it can still be considered the
Yeah,
same patient summary. You could have a permanent endpoint
yeah,
for a patient, keep getting the same thing that keeps getting updated, or whatever we're calling it, with new information because it's using the business identifier rather than the instance identifier. So, I mean, I'm not too fussed about the particular wording we use. Um, whether that is, yeah,
yeah.
I
And
yeah.
I don't even know if it is a replacement necessarily as well, because I mean, it just could be a more current patient summary.
Yeah, Michael Osborne suggested
Yeah.
the word new instance, and I don't have any problem with that.
Heath, you have your hand up.
Currently, the IG doesn't talk about anything around interactions, and so this is really just a description of some use cases without really having any technical mapping to them. So I just don't think that it's something that we want to get involved in at the moment, given the scope of what the IG is covering, which is really just the content models and not how things get updated. Having said that, there is existing mechanisms around FHIR documents that how things get replaced and the like. So I don't think we need to reiterate any of that kind of stuff. As Danielle said, this is not our description. It is not our diagram. And I don't think we need to elaborate any further because of our content only profile.
Well, Heath, that might well be, but the wording on the diagram leads to sort of a different interpretation. So I don't think that sort of a
But
situation like that is
we're not
desirable.
discounting any possible future interactions at this point in time. So, whatever update means from a conceptual perspective, that the clinicians want to do an update. What does that mean technically? We have not said anything. So it is purely a clinical requirement that we've inherited. And I don't think that we need to be trying to clarify that at the moment because we don't know how to clarify that at the moment because that is not in scope.
But the IG is a technical document. You put sort of like a conceptually ambiguous term in a technical document that leads to different interpretation, and that's undesirable.
Well, we've already said that we would take this back to the CFG.
Sure, yeah, I'm okay with that.
So there's nothing more that really this group can do because we don't own it. And if we tried to clarify it, it may not be in line on what their intent was.
Okay, thanks, Heath. Well, to move things along, what I might do then is I might reiterate previously, put forward a motion to accept this resolution description as is for this change request, but noting that this is not persuasive with mod because we're going to clarify the focus and move the use case statement above the diagram and provide feedback to the CFG as CFG as we just discussed. But yeah, non-persuasive with mod is a friendly amendment to the existing resolution description. So I'd like to put forward a motion.
Thanks. Anyone happy to second that?
I'm happy to second it, Heath.
Thanks, Heath. Need a couple more votes. Another 5 seconds and I'll end the poll. Thank you. I'll now read out the results. So we've had 11 affirmative votes, including an affirmative vote from Landon in the chat and 3 abstain, which means the motion has passed. Thank you, and thanks, Lennon.
Thank you.
Okay, I will continue from here. So let me just share my screen. Will just this. Okay. All right. So the next 3 issues, I'll take us through them. So the first one we have here is 56084, and it's about removing paragraphs regarding future releases. This was raised by myself, and the issue description is as depicted here in the screen. So the request was that we remove paragraphs regarding other methods that may be supported in future releases, as this has the potential to leave the specification in a more fluid state. There is a small excerpt of the paragraphs that have been suggested to be removed, so I'll go into the issue and I will go into the specification. So am I the right one? Okay. Open the... Yeah, okay. So this is This is the one. So the suggestion was for us to consider removing this, and the co-chairs have had a discussion, and they agreed that the proposed disposition for this one should be not persuasive, and the resolution is described here that this is not persuasive, as this content is informative and does not introduce any new requirements or change the scope of the specification. It does not define supported methods or imply future commitments. The content reflects approaches discussed and agreed by the working group. It's included to provide additional context on potential approaches beyond those currently recommended by IPS. Removing it would reduce this context without improving clarity or conformance. So I'm happy to open up for any questions or comments
Do you want
on
to take
this
your,
one.
I guess, co-chair hat off for a minute,
Yep.
and talk about what the concern was and what you want to put in front of the community?
I can do that, but mostly, probably two things that I'd call out. So opening up the room for future avenues to pursue that we're not sure whether we want to do that or not. So it was one of the reasons. So this kind of gives you a bit of an angle to potentially try to pursue, and that could, I guess, put us in a position of having to consider something that might not be the right thing for us to consider. And then in more kind of specific terms, when we talk about things like email, USB, or DVD, that probably not things that I think would be something we would be open to consider in the future, and just having them called out explicitly in the specification could leave some room for people to try to explore that. So that's really the main two kind of reasons leading to this issue being raised. Heath.
I guess when this page was created, we through a number of events, I guess, testing events, connectathons, etc. We were exploring, what are the options for us to exchange. Basically, generate and access was the title of the page, patient summaries, and we narrowed it down, I guess, to a smaller set, but from a level of why not removing the previous content altogether was left here. Now, I can perhaps see some reservation, concern about maybe the word in the middle there, recommendations, or future. There might be a future recommendation that might involve these, but the intent was definitely there to basically say there are others out there, or these other ways that could be leveraged, other than those that have been recommended on the page, that people might want to consider. That these aren't the only options that are out there. There are other jurisdictions doing some of these things. There's some legacy approaches to exchanging documents that we do now that perhaps we could continue to use, but need to consider the security associated with that and all those sorts of things. So, as I said, I can see that word recommendations might be being a little bit too strong. But other than that, I think that was really an avenue around making sure that we still at least let people know that there are these other standards, such as the IHE ones. We've got the basic FHIR REST API interactions. And, if anything, the main concern one there is the encrypted file exchange, but still, because again, as I said before, we're not saying anything around what the interactions are at this point. So anything and everything is pretty much on the table at this point in time.
Thanks, Heath. Danielle.
I'll say the word recommendations has come from, I guess, the language that IPS has used. Uh, I don't really care whether we keep it or not. Um, IPS has a similar section-ish where they say that in future that their specification may describe and recommend particular pathways for exchange. So that's why we've used the word describe and recommend. But meh, it's it's not that important.
Thank you. I can't see any other hands up. So would anyone like to submit a motion that we accept the proposed disposition and resolution for this specific issue?
I'm happy to move that we find this issue not persuasive.
Thanks. Can I have a second?
I'm happy to second that, Landon Riley.
Thank you. Let me just launch the poll. A few more votes. Okay. I'll give it another 5 seconds before ending the poll. All right, I'll now read out the results. So we have 12 affirmative votes, and that includes Landon's affirmative vote in the chat, and we have 4 abstain, which means the motion has passed. Thank you. Next one. Okay, so the next one is issue 56124, and it was raised by Stephen Chu, and it has to do with the section 3.3 figure 3, the AU passport, lacking context and description. So the issue description can be seen here, depicted on the slide. So it says that there is no description within section 3.3 or any other sections of the AUPS landing page that explains the concept of the AU passport, how it's intended to relate to AUPS or AUPS actors. Suggested changes include context and descriptions in section 3.3 to explain the relationship of the passport to AUPS and AUPS actors, or remove figure 3. So let me just get this on screen, and I will go on to the passport section, which is further down here. So this is the section that's and the figure that's specifically being mentioned in this issue, and I'll just go back quickly to the slides. So the co-chairs recommend that this is for the proposed disposition, that this is not persuasive with modification, and the proposed resolution is as follows. So the figure caption will be updated to figure 3. The AUPS, a valid AUPS document is a valid IPS document. We'll also increase the image size to make it easier to read, not persuasive to remove figure 3 or include additional contextual description. The figure is supported by the surrounding text and represents a relationship between IPS and AUPS. The caption will be updated to figure 3. As mentioned previously, the AUPS, a valid AUPS document is a valid IPS document. So I'm happy to open to questions or comments now, if anyone's got any.
Could you go show the spot in the IG where that is?
Yep. There you go. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. So an update is proposed to the caption, and an update is proposed to the figure size, so it gets a bit bigger and it's easier to read what's in it.
Mm-hmm.
Any further questions or comments?
I don't have any.
Okay. Anything you want to add, Stephen?
No, I think all good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. If there's nothing else anyone wants to raise further, then would someone please be interested in putting forward a motion for this one?
I'll motion that we accept the proposed disposition of not persuasive with mod and the resolution as described, which will have to be taken into the minutes, Shelley, as we can see on this slide.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
I'll second Rob Eastwood.
Thanks, Rob. Okay. Few more votes. Okay, we'll give it 5 seconds for ending the poll. All right. So I'll now read out the results. So we've had 12 affirmative, including 1 affirmative from Landon in the chat and 1 abstain, which means the motion is passed. Okay. Screen. And so the last one for today is 561 28, and I believe this one was raised by Stephen. Yep, so it was raised by Stephen. Let's just close this one. So the issue description is that referencing base file resources instead of FHIR profiles need explanatory notes, and then in further detail, as you can see here, that it was asserted that data elements do not have SO obligation reference via base resources and do not reference FHIR-based resource and not base core or UPS profiles. However, this is not obvious to those who are not familiar with the IG development guidelines principles. As such, there's confusion to readers. This is particularly when the IG defined a PS patient, practitioner role, related person, organization, etc. for use in the UPS IG. So the change suggestion is that we add explanatory text and the 4.1 general guidance to provide clarity to readers. This issue also applies to other PS profiles. So I will go into the issue and the section of the IG. So this is the section in the IG that this issue is referring to. In terms of a way forward for this, the co-chairs agree this is a persuasive. So the proposed disposition for this issue is persuasive, with the proposed resolution that there will be an update to the profile design principles to clearly indicate that reference constraints apply only to elements flagged as must support. So a reference will be added here to the page to ensure more clarity is provided to readers, consumers of this FHIR implementation. Okay. Happy to open up now to the virtual room for any comments or questions anyone might have.
Yeah, I've got a couple that I think I need to check here about what, if anything, should change. Maybe I should share screen, if that's okay.
Yep, go for it.
All right, okay, after you stop sharing, I think I can. All right, I think let me know when you can see it.
Yep.
All right, so what we're talking about is okay. So under general guidance, there was added some content in AU Base, AU Core Patient Summary that talked about how the profiles and the content extensions, etc. defined. So in terms of this, we're talking about resource profiles, um, and I think we're talking about a change to the profile design principles. Um, I've got some reservations around what was proposed. I have some reservations because I know they're not in the principles, which is the principles are largely about going, how do we have a single unified specification that meets both patient summary and cause requirements? That's really what the principles are. And then we've got a profiling approach. The profiling approach does say this, though, that we do not further constrain things that aren't labeled must support. Like, that's actually in there. There are, however, there is one current contradiction to that rule, and we have a bullet point on it, which is about body site. We're inheriting that from core, and that was agreed from the community. So I guess I'm iffy on, like, what are we actually changing? There's a statement here about the profiling approach, but in terms of principles, what do we say? Noting that we will actually have constraints that are on things that aren't must support because we're inheriting them from core, or sometimes we might get them from patient summary.
Danielle, the concept of further constraint and referencing specific file profile or AU core profile are two different concepts. So I do not see any overlap in what this ticket has asked for and the concept of further constraint. So I'm not particularly sure that adding an other qualification statement to say that the data elements outside must support requirement do not reference AU core profiles. And I think that makes it a lot clearer rather than leaving it is at the moment. That statement is too ambiguous, to my opinion.
Well, I mean, I don't think the one I highlighted is. That very clearly says we don't further constrain. And profiles are all constraints. That's what a profile is. But okay, so we're trying to say that AUPS profiles will locally not add additional constraints unless something is must support. I would like to actually further caveat that though to say, just like with AU Core, while I wouldn't necessarily agree with it, I still think there's a case-by-case basis where the community would consider it. In principle, though, we don't. So, assuming we're all going, yeah, these are principles, not hard rules, then that's okay.
So when a reader who reads the FHIR IG and see the discrepancies in the referencing, so some elements reference AU core profiles and some elements reference the generic base resource. People are going to ask the question, what exactly underpin their decision? And that bullet point that you have highlighted, do not further constrain elements or extension, doesn't give the reader that level of clarity. And that's the reason of making the
No, but this
suggestion,
one does. The bit about references is covered in a bullet point.
but it doesn't say that it doesn't say anything. This bullet point doesn't say anything about the must support elements.
Okay, so a sub bullet point under there would satisfy?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. No, and that's what I wanted to be clear on because I know we already have some content here and I was really unsure about how do I make this clearer than what it is. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the discussion. Any further comments or questions? Back to sharing screen. Right, so I can't see any further hands being raised. So would anyone like to submit a motion for this one, please?
So just to be clear, the resolution is to apply, provide a clearly indicate
Correct.
by using that extra dot point that Danielle suggested.
Yes, that's good.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to motion that.
Thank you, Danielle. Can I have a second, please?
I'll second if
Thanks, Heath. I'll give it 5 seconds. I'll end the form. Right, I'll read out the results now. So we've had 13 affirmative, including 1 affirmative from Landon in the chat, 1 abstain, which means the motion has passed. Thank you. And this brings us to the end of the ballot resolution item agenda, and I'll hand over to Danielle, who will take us through the PSQA.html.
Oh, yeah, I think I'm going to, but can you just stay sharing for a smidge?
Yep.
Because
Okay.
what's that second slide after that? What's that one? Yes, good. Reminder to people that Heath and I are going to the Rotterdam Connectathon. I don't know, Heath or Shelley, if you guys could find links to pop in the chat. And if you have a system that implements or is in progress implementing Patient Summary and could make it available, we'll send you details. Um, that we want to go test that against international because the whole point is that Australian Patient Summary works like an IPS. And we want to test that against other different national jurisdictions. We're in talks with the Europeans to get a whole bunch of people together to try to test that out. I think there's like 9 different Australian systems who've already signed up, which is pretty awesome. So, yeah. I didn't want to miss kind of spruiking that because it's pretty amazing. All right, so I'll start sharing and do. Okay, we've only got what, like 8 minutes left of this meeting?
Yes.
Right. So if you could, okay, stop sharing and I'll start sharing. I'll only do a little bit of this. And could I ask then that maybe we have a standing item to go through this? Um, what I'm going to go through is what's called the QA.html, which at the bottom of any IG you can see what's called a QA report. That's the report that comes out of the automated validation of the build. Every IG has it, US Core, IPS, etc. And one of the things that we need to do is, as a group, is understand the results and have some decisions around whether or not we accept those, the ones that are going to be that are going to stay, that we're not going to work on to fix, and identify those that we have to work on to fix. Now, we don't have a lot of time to go through everything today, so I'm going to just try to maybe do one or two and ask for a decision on that. Um, and so what we will do is go through, I mean, we will go through everything. So let's start with, I think, the errors. There is like one error. It's like the big error that goes through everything. And I wanted to draw people's attention to it, and I'd like us to vote on whether or not we accept it. Spoiler alert, I think we should. Because there is an error that gets thrown by the FHIR validator, which is part of the publication pipeline. And this error occurs on our patient profile. And it does that because if I go back to a UPS and go back to our guidance on how do we do our profiles. So how we do our profiles looks like that, or really more like this for patient. We do a lot of work in Australia around localization of clinical reference sets and a whole bunch of things that mean that we derive from the Australian stack of profiles and we claim compliance with IPS. Um, and so the current implementation of the FHIR validator that is checking whether or not we're compliant is throwing an error. We totally are compliant, and that's fine. But there's a new extension pack. It's not quite okay. The last version of that is a TC ballot version. TC stands for technical correction. And in there, the extensions for gender identity and pronouns have normative changes. And because we're claiming compliance, what IG Publisher and the validator are doing in the background is trying to evaluate if the same checks are happening across both profiles. And they're not, because the IPS profile for patient is referencing an updated version of the extension pack. So the content on the wire, totally fine. That doesn't change. What's happened in the extension pack is it adds like a couple of extra elements. But because it's not exactly the same in terms of a computable equivalence, it's saying no, this does not comply. So we're getting this error. This has been acknowledged. There's a link here to the Zulip chat for Graham, who said, yes, I realize that, and I'll fix it at some point in my backlog, noting he has a very big backlog going on. So I don't expect that anytime soon. So what we're seeing with these errors is any resource that references a patient, and these are the examples, that reference a patient with the extension gender identity or the extension pronouns throws an error because IG Publisher tries to evaluate the equivalence of the IPS profile, which includes gender identity and pronouns, and the AU Core one, which is based on the last published release. And is saying, well, they're not exactly equivalent, so I'm going to say there's an error. Now, did I go into too much detail? Does that make sense to people?
Yeah, makes sense to me.
So that's this error. And looking at the time, I mean, we need to go through and discuss all the different things that are coming up from the QA report and vote on whether or not we accept them. But unless there are any questions, I would like to move that because Graham's backlog is significant. And this isn't a priority. It's likely going to stay then when we publish. So I would like us to vote on accepting this error for the AU Patient Summary FHIR IG. So that's my motion.
Thanks, Danielle. Can I have a second?
This is Andrew. I'll second.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, we have good numbers, so I'll give it another 5 seconds. And the poll.
And while that's happening, I'd also like to say to the people who are using Inferno for AU Patient Summary, because Inferno includes the validator, this also comes up. I had a great chat with Nick from Epic at the last Connectathon, working through some of this, and yeah, they're seeing this. So I think one of the things that we agreed on was to update the documentation around the Australian Patient Summary Inferno test kit to make it clear that uh, this is not a you thing. It's a FHIR validator thing. Heath?
It's unrelated, just on closeout, if I can.
Okay, I'll just quickly read out the results from the poll. So we had 11 affirmative that include the affirmative vote from Landon in the chat, 2 abstain, which means the motion has passed. So thank you. Heath?
If I could just very briefly mention a couple of issues around the info sessions that we've been having regarding AU Core. So we've had a number of composition info sessions for including a profile into AU Core, which has obviously relevance to this group, but also document references in progress as well. So I'm just putting some links in the chat. There's an info page on the wiki for composition. It contains info session videos, links to slides and minutes, etc. The actual working proposal. There's a poll there for a preferred profile name. So interested in feedback there. Also for implementers support for must support elements in composition. Looking for feedback on that. And then there's a couple of pages around document reference as well. So that one's in progress, but most importantly, there's a poll on Zulip to look for a second session next week as well. And there's also the document reference vendor support feedback page that I would be interested to have some additional items that's an older page that was considered an R1. But if we can get some newer feedback in that particular page, it would help the information sessions going forward. So thank you. Sorry for taking you over time.
It's good. Thanks for that. Hit, and I can see posted all the links in the chat. That's great. Look, we're out of time, so I'll quickly close the meeting. So thanks everyone for again taking the time to join us here today. The next meeting is scheduled for 2 weeks' time, and we'll continue to focus on a couple of the things we've gone through today, like ballot reconciliation and the QA report walkthrough. So thanks again, and we'll see you all at the next meeting.
It's actually next week, Ricardo.
Oh, is it next week?
Yeah.
Okay.
Easter got in the way. Yeah.
Even better. So see you all next week then.
Thanks,
you all.
Ricardo. Thanks, Landon.